What's going on, Wolfpack Nation? Thank you all so much again for tuning in here. So we got an exciting episode. Decided to change it up a little bit here. We haven't done an episode like this before, but super excited to do. We got Matt here from, and you may not recognize him, but it's a podcast called Fourth and Dude, and they talk Boston College. That they're Boston College in and out, and if you haven't checked them out, you can find them all major podcasts. And again, I'll let Matt kind of talk a little bit about it as well. But I'm sure too, we'll probably have some Fourth and Dude people listening to this as well or checking this out, which is awesome. But first of all, thank you, Matt, for joining us today. Really do appreciate it.
Hey, great to be here. Excited to talk football with you guys.
So first, Matt, wanted to kind of start off with that. I know we were kind of talking a little bit here beforehand, but what a great weekend of ACC football, but football in general. Ooh. I mean, there were so many good games this season. I think Boston College and NC State couldn't have picked a better bye week to have, where we could literally all just sit on the couch and watch some awesome college football.
No, that's exactly right. It was kind of a stress-free Saturday for us, right? Didn't have to worry about winning and losing. It was just from noon all the way through. It was just nonstop action when you talk about Oklahoma, all the way up through the Virginia Tech game. I mean, just nonstop action. One of the best weekends of college football that I can remember in a long time.
I'd 100% agree with you on that. I mean, again, just ACC-wise, you saw the huge comeback from Virginia to beat Louisville. You saw the Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, Syracuse, you name it. There was so much good football. And so,
we didn't even talk about A&M yet, right?
No, not yet. No. Not yet, but again, I mean, hey, at the end of the day, we got our own big game coming up here a little bit later this week, so definitely looking forward to talking about that. But first of all, I wanted to kind of ask you, so was there one game that maybe was a favorite to yours as well, or maybe that you had your eyes more on from the ACC side?
Yeah, I mean, the ACC has had a rough go of it lately, right? So I kind of thought Virginia Tech, it was kind of a must-win against a weak Notre Dame team, and, Lane Stadium looked like an electric environment. The Hokies looked pretty good, and Burmeister was doing things. I don't know how they were doing it, but they were doing just enough to build that lead. And when they went up by 8 with 3 or 4 minutes to go, I was like, all right, that's it. I mean, the way Notre Dame looked, especially without that big tight end, they couldn't move the ball. They didn't know who was going to play quarterback. I mean, they couldn't throw the ball. They were still running the Wildcat, which I'm not sure how any offensive coordinators run the Wildcat in the year 2021. But so really disappointing the ACC couldn't pull that one out, because that would have been a nice little feather in our cap.
Yeah, well, especially too, because I feel like that. I mean, all of us ACCers, definitely have not say a hatred per se towards Notre Dame, but just more of like a, God, like they tick me off at times. I mean, it's great to play them, but it's just like an annoyance, because then we're not really benefiting anything from them, and they're mostly a part of our conference, but they're not a part of our conference, so it's just a big fat annoyance. So Matt, I wanted to kind of ask a little bit, just for those State fans, here. So what is your kind of background with Boston College? Did you go to Boston College? Just kind of get a little background about yourself as a Boston College guy.
Yeah, sure. I've been a BC fan my whole life. I graduated in the class of 2013, but before that, growing up in the area, my parents went there, a bunch of my family went there. So I had season tickets from, call it probably 2005 all the way up through 2017, 2018. I recently moved down to Philly, so I currently live in the Philadelphia area, and obviously tougher to get to games. I still try to go to 3 or 4 per year, but I've been a fan as far back as Tom O'Brien, the Matt Ryan days. We had some, right when BC was joining the ACC. I remember that, for example, the 2006 game, right? BC, we're down in Raleigh. We have the lead, a couple minutes to go. And I still don't know how we lost that football game with that Hail Mary from the 30-yard line. I don't even know who your quarterback was back then, but somehow we lost that game in the final seconds. I'll never remember that. I was like 14 years old, and it was just a crushing defeat. But ever since then, we've had a ton of good battles going back and forth. So, so like you said, me and my buddy, also named Matt, started doing this Fourth and Dude podcast. It's an homage to the Steve Adazio days, right? And his big catchphrase was, be a dude, and that caught on for a little bit until folks kind of realized that he was a lot of talk and not much substance. But we've been covering the team. Not really covering the team for anyone important, but just the two of us. And, we got a decent, Twitter following and all that. But it's been a lot of fun covering the team, especially recently, now that Hafley's been aboard. So that's kind of my background. Been a fan, as much as I can remember. And, a lot of folks don't realize that there are a few diehards in the Boston area when it comes to college football. I know we get a bad reputation out there, but there's a few of us diehards out there.
Yeah.
Well, you've got so many great professional sports. It's totally understandable, but do you lean heavily more towards like the Patriots, or are you like a Celtics fan or a Bruins fan?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean,
Red Sox.
I'm all Boston. Born and raised. Half hour north of the city, so I'm a diehard all Boston teams. But yeah, I would trade away a couple of Super Bowls probably for an Orange Bowl or something like that. Or even a March Madness appearance these days with how the hoops team's been. But yeah, it's been a pro sports town in the last 20 years, and we've just been so good. And BC in the last decade or so has certainly fallen off ever since the Jack Kaczynski era. Right. So things are changing, and I'm not rooting for the past to suck, even though it kind of seems like we're heading in that direction. But if Hafley can fill that void, maybe we can generate some interest citywide in college football finally.
Yeah. Well, before we jump into Jeff Hafley, though, I wanted to kind of bring up, you mentioned a little bit earlier about the 2006 era. And so, obviously with Boston College, we obviously share one big thing in common, that is obviously Tom O'Brien, and the fact that, obviously, he was big for, I feel like he's a big part of the Boston College football history, obviously, with Matt Ryan and the teams that, he had under him. And, obviously after that, he came to NC State for a while, and, he, had his opportunities and, did overall well, with like Russell Wilson, and then had his Matt Ryan-esque replacement in Mike Glennon, who actually played for the Giants. Actually, we're recording this on Sunday, so today actually, which was cool to see. So wanted to kind of first ask. So, what was your initial reaction? Go ahead.
So I was just going to say Glennon had a nice little pick six at the end of the game. Sorry, I didn't want to bring it up, but that was a tough.
That's okay. Yeah. Yeah, hey, again, it's cool to see him there, but again, it's
he's still got a job.
He's still got a job. Exactly. He's
still
throwing in the
Surprisingly,
NFL.
honestly.
So, but what was your initial reaction when the decision was made that Tom O'Brien would leave Boston College and head to NC State? What was your initial reaction during that time?
It's tough to go back in that time frame because you didn't realize how good you had it. Right. And it was consistent 8-win seasons. He would make a bowl. We would win the bowl. We had that, 8 or 9 straight bowl win streak. And, but he could never win the big game. That was the whole thing with TOB. And we would always find, late in the year, big game against the Florida State or someone like that. And we wouldn't have what it took. And it is funny that when he left, that team was so stacked in 07 and 08. We went on to go to consecutive ACC Atlantic championships. That was TOB's team. And I'm certain that, and Jeff Jagosinski gets all the credit, but that was TOB's roster. It had finally come together. We had studs across the board. Obviously, Matt Ryan was the headliner, but that defense was incredible. And TOB's fingerprints were all over that football team. It is funny that when he went to NC State, he didn't quite have the same success, but overall, his legacy at BC is overwhelmingly positive. I think he's the all-time winningest coach, if I'm not mistaken, at BC. I should have double-checked that pre-show, but I think that's the case.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
There were studs for sure, but I mean, even though necessarily maybe he didn't have as much success in terms of necessarily the amount of wins, the overall blueprint of how the seasons would go were generally the same, where basically he would get you 6, 7, 8 wins. He'd win a bowl game. He beat your rival, and that was it, and then he'll have one really big win.
He met the bar. He met the bar. The bar was here, and he always was there. And it's like, man, you can count on him to be right there.
Right there at the bar, exactly. So, but, hey, it's one thing, Matt, we wanted to kind of jump into is, you had mentioned Jeff Hafley. And so now we kind of talked about the old times, we want to talk about this time. So I think for all of us at NC State, I think that it's mind-boggling for us, and I think for everybody in the country for sure, seeing how great of a job Jeff Hafley's done so far at Boston College within his first year and a half, and how competitive he's been every single game. And also too, just the turnover from Steve Adazio, where with Adazio, it was just a really great defense, specifically when Don Brown was there, and the offense was always so, and it just never really got more than that, really. But then now all of a sudden it's like, wow, Boston College is competing in the Atlantic and is right there to win it even this year. and probably will be for the near future. It's amazing to see. I think that all of us NC State, but nationwide, are astounded, first of all. So wanted to kind of let you kind of talk from a Boston College side, kind of expand on that a little bit there. Before we continue, I want to take a quick second to tell you about our sponsor, Flatlands Jessup Insurance Group, that has your whole world covered, with agents in 5 offices throughout eastern North Carolina to help you decide how much coverage you need. Offering policies for home and auto, recreational vehicles, commercial, crop, health, life, and employee benefits. They are able to combine options to find a comprehensive solution that works for you. Flatlands Jessup protects the things you love so you can spend less time worrying and more time enjoying them. Find them on Facebook and Instagram at Flatlands Jessup. You can also visit their webpage at www.flatlandsjessup.com. So please make sure to go and check them out.
So yeah, I mean, after Hafley got hired in 2019, I think everyone from a BC fan base was kind of done with the Steve Addazio era. I mean, Addazio was consistently winning 7 wins. He got a nickname 7-win Steve as a result of that. He couldn't surpass that 7-win threshold. And Addazio, sort of wasn't all that popular with the media. The style of play wasn't that popular. So, when Hafley came in, he sort of rejuvenated the program in a lot of ways. And a lot of it's sort of the off the field stuff where he's just like this intelligent, personable guy. And he's always joking around with the media, and he takes accountability whenever anything goes wrong. On the field, we're actually, a competitive football team. We're making smart in-game adjustments. We're playing really good team stuff like the Clemson game that everyone saw last year, and certainly the Clemson game again last week. We used to get blown out by, ranked opponents. That was sort of what happened, right? And with Hafley, It doesn't matter. We sort of play up and down to our opponent, which is a little bit of a knock on Hafley that sometimes we have days off against Syracuse last year comes to mind, stuff like that. But overall, he's just the right kind of guy for this program. He's really ramped up recruiting. BC's always sucked at recruiting. We've had a really hard time, breaking into the top 50 when it comes to Power 5 recruiting. He's done that, especially defensive back at the skill positions. We're going up against blue bloods and, SEC teams rather than just getting kind of the leftovers of the Northeast, from a recruiting battle standpoint. And, the program was just stale. It was time for a change. And obviously we're still in the honeymoon phase a little bit with Hafley, but everything's sort of looking up at this point. If he continues on this trajectory, sky's kind of the limit for this program.
But the one thing though, which I will add though, so didn't Eli Drinkwitz say that he doesn't really go after recruits in the Boston area? Am I correct on that?
Don't get me started on Drinkwitz. What an idiot that guy is. Sorry if you guys like him.
He was our. He was our OC. No one really, when he was here for 2 years or whatever, no one was in love with him. So
yeah, he was fine.
He single-handedly lost that football game. He single-handedly lost that football game for Missouri because I'll tell you what, our players were hyper-focused. Our defense in particular was all over them, and you can't do that. What are you thinking making a comment like that? What's the gain by saying that?
Well,
what an idiot.
But see, that's right. But that's the same kind of thing that Jimbo Fisher did to Alabama, and he won. So it's it doesn't happen often. But why would you say something like
Lane
that?
Kiffin said it too. Lane Kiffin said it too about Alabama, and they lost.
Jimbo, he was more saying that before Nick leaves, because obviously everybody's talking about that Nick Saban's going to retire at some point, that we're going to get him one time. But Drinkwitz is basically was just hating on the Boston area, saying
and I would say this too. I would add this too. Jimbo's was more a statement about Saban. Right. Drinkwitz was more about the players, who cares about talent in Boston area? Who cares about who would want the players in that area? And those players are like, whoa, that's us.
What are you talking about?
Versus just talking about one coach. It'd be like him saying, I'm going to go kick Jeff Hafley's butt. Okay. It's different when you're saying, there ain't no talent up in Boston for football. That's a whole different thing.
Well, that's half our roster. Half our roster is from the Boston area.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the other thing too. Yeah. Hafley won the PR battle because he said, "Listen, I don't care I'll jump on a plane right now. I'll go to Missouri. I'll play anyone, anytime, anywhere." So he won the PR battle. And I'll say this too. We were talking earlier about how no one cares about BC in the Northeast. Kind of true, kind of not. People actually cared about this football game because now you're offending Bostonians. Right now you're coming after New Englanders. You don't do that.
Yeah, it got personal real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, one of the things I did want to bring up is now we're kind of, talking a little bit here is one of the biggest blows, I think, to Boston College for sure this season was the loss of Phil Jurkovec. I think that was, because I think for all of us State fans, even particular that, you watched Boston College in that first game or so. And I mean, it was clear Boston College was a talented team. And I knew, and I think we all knew that, I mean, that was going to be a tough, kind of hill to push through playing that team. And I think overall, I mean, I think you guys have actually even said it that Gabe Grossel was one of the best backup quarterbacks in college football. And I mean, he's definitely seemed to, I mean, basically just saying like he hasn't been spectacular, but he's been very solid for sure. Very impressed overall. So I mean, kind of, if you wouldn't mind, kind of talk a little bit more about maybe what your initial reaction was when you heard Phil Jurkovec being out for the season, then your thoughts so far on Grossel's performance so far this season.
Yeah, so Denny, and we said it for going back to last year, because Denny would come into these big spots and it would be a key 3rd and 5, right? And he would make a perfect strike. It'd be right. It'd be in traffic. The Clemson game comes to mind. He extended a drive that almost won us the football game. He came in against UVA and set the program record for passing yards in a game, tied with Doug Flutie, lit him up for 520 yards. So in spots, Denny's like he's so much fun to root for. He's been with the program for 5 or 6 years now, knows the offense like the back of his hand. But he was a QB2 for a reason. And just to talk about Jurko for a little bit. I mean, obviously, the guy has the measurables. He has an absolute cannon of an arm. What he did last year, at times putting the team on his back. The other thing, too, is we've never had weapons like this before. The BC football that you guys are used to doesn't have guys like Zay Flowers or Jalen Gill or CJ Lewis, these big, fast receivers that can compete with anyone. ACC quality D-backs, the likes of Clemson, right? Like, we are as loaded at the wide receiver position as we've ever been. So that was a big part of it, too. It's kind of our passing attacks fully come together. We got a great O-line that can protect the quarterback. And Jurko's, if he had the year that we were hoping he was going to have, probably a top 5 quarterback prospect. Again, certainly has the size. Certainly has the
Jurkovec's good.
So It goes without saying that our season sort of changed, right, completely once Jurko went down with the broken hand in week 2. But I'll say this about Denny. I mean, Denny Grissel, like I said, I mean, the guy's a gamer. We kind of compare him to Ryan Fitzpatrick because he has just this way of getting first downs and keeping plays alive. You don't know how he does it. And he's limited when it comes to talent. He was a preferred walk-on, going back a few years. He's pretty accurate when it comes to short and medium routes, when he has time to throw, when it's single coverage. He can do all that. And he put that on display against Clemson, last week. He can do that. The problem is if our running game isn't working or if there's guys in his face or he's trying to, beat double coverage downfield and he starts forcing things, that's not his game. He has a definitive ceiling. So he can be a great piece and he can be a great, I hate the word game manager, but he can be a great game manager. He just needs a couple pieces around him to be successful. So, I think a lot of people thought the sky was falling when Jurko went down. We've been a little more, optimistic when it comes to what Denny can do. But it really has been on the coaching staff to really pivot how this offense works. And it's going to be on kind of everyone to step up for the rest of the season because we're probably 10 points less explosive with Denny as opposed to Phil. But we can still win football games with Denny, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I thought you guys, when I look back at that Clemson game, and overall in the season since Grossel's been playing, we've been talking about it. I mean, he's looked way better than I didn't know who. I mean, I didn't know who he was, and he's looked pretty good for a backup quarterback coming into play. It's kind of makes you think a little bit of how we had a quarterback last season when Devin Leary got injured. Bailey Hockman came in. No one really knew who Bailey Hockman was, but he came in and he was like, wow, okay, he's actually doing pretty good. So with Grossel, I still think you don't have to drop Boston College and have to change their expectations a ton going into the season.
Yeah, well, especially now that you see how the ACC is looking right now.
Yeah. Here's a stat for you. You guys saw what he did last week against Clemson, and he's getting vilified for that bad snap at the end, right, which sucks. And he missed a couple guys on those a couple deep bombs that people are saying, oh, Jerko hits those all the time, and it would have been great. Guys had separation; those would have been touchdowns, that type of thing. But he threw for 311 yards. There's only 4 quarterbacks in the last 3 years that have thrown for 300 yards against Clemson: Justin Fields, Ian Book, and Joe Burrow. That's a pretty good list to be on. So, I'm probably as positive as it comes to, being a Dennis Grissel believer. The rest of the fan base is a little down on him. You guys know how fan bases work. If put the backup in. Our backup is now like a true sophomore that's never, gotten a snap before. That's not going to happen. Denny's our guy. He can also kill you with his legs. He's a smart player. And, hopefully the coaches use the bye week to sort of restructure the offense around his capabilities first, because it's not filled back there anymore.
Yep. Michael, you got anything?
I was gonna say with Jeff Hafley, obviously you seem to like him and think he's got the program going in a good direction. Where do you see the ceiling for him and for Boston College just as a program in general? Because obviously, you get Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State that are always competing for national titles, and then you get teams that are consistently top 25. Where do you see the ceiling for Boston College there as a program?
Yeah, it's a good question. And now that the ACC is looking a little different, especially the Atlantic, right? If, and let's not overreact. Clemson's still going to be Clemson, we think, right? They're going to figure it out. But Florida State's down for the count. Right. Louisville hasn't been good in a while. It's you guys and us, and then pretty much no one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, because of
Wake Forest. Don't forget Wake Forest.
I would say Wake Forest.
No, you're right. You're right. Although their schedule's been pretty soft. I think they got some work to do. They're a good team, but
I agree with that.
To prove it. So I mean, listen, I think that it ebbs and flows. Like when Clemson's the best team in the country, when Florida State's a top 10 team, when Louisville has Lamar Jackson, and you guys know this, right? In the 2015, 2016 days, it's tough to do much better than 7-5, right? Now that it's a little more even, now that it's a little more, if we can, field a half decent team, we got a shot at it. I don't know. I think consistent 8-4 with the potential to go 10-2 type of thing, and then maybe I don't know, 6-2 gets you into the ACC Atlantic Championship, and then you can win the ACC. A lot of that's contingent on Clemson actually coming back down to earth a little bit. But I think that's where BC wants to be. I think we want to be 8 wins should be our ceiling, or our floor rather. And then, we have a couple of years where we put it together. Yeah. We have a generational quarterback like Phil, and we have, great receivers, this great O-line. Why can't we compete? Why can't we be a 10-win a year team, at least, once every few years? So I don't know. It seems like that's what Hafley's building. The question is he going to stick around and for the long term and really build it and see it through? I'm not sure about that. I hope it is. He's saying all the right things at this point, but this is the kind of guy that, could get hired at a USC or any other program across the country, just with how much the national media loves him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we'll definitely pick that topic up here with the next episode. So we'll save that for our next part. But thank you all so much again for tuning in. Please make sure, if you haven't already, please make sure to hit that free subscribe button. It really helps support us in the channel. Please give this video a like. Check out all of our other great state content, and also make sure to go if you want to check out Fourth and Dude. And again, Matt, I'm assuming you guys are on all major podcast networks. Am I correct on that?
We sure are. We're also on Twitter at Fourth for the number Fourth and Dude.
Perfect. Yeah, so make sure to go and check them out and stay in touch with them. But thank you all so much again for tuning in. And as always, go Pack, y'all.